Greg, could you just zoom in a little bit on the central part? Boeotia is like in the gray.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing is
It,
that just
I
because
would
there's
just
a war
say
going
I
on,
can't fully blame the Thebans for this, since even Macedonia and Thessaly also joined.
yeah. But there's also an additional reason that might persuade the Thebans is that the Thebans are the primary rival of Athens just over the border, and they hate the Athenians, and the feeling is mutual. So anything that destroys
Very
Athens is
nice.
good for Thebes. And
It's
also involved is
political
Argos.
backstabbing.
Yeah, a similar
That's
situation.
every day of the Greeks.
Yeah, a similar situation also applies to Argos in the Peloponnese. They governed the region of Argolis, and they had recently lost a pretty devastating war against Sparta, in which most of their military power in the region was destroyed. And so they do attend the conference. However, they demand leadership over the entire Greek alliance. The Greek alliance, including Sparta, are obviously not open to this idea. And I think one
Were
of the
they not
ambassadors,
open to it, or they laughed on the hell out of at their faces?
if you actually read Diodorus Siculus, the actual conversation goes something like, so if we don't really care if you don't want to be in this alliance. If you value the leadership of the Greeks over being subjugated by the Persians, because they're sort of making a meal out of this sort of title of leader of the Greeks, which they're not really in a position to claim. So so these are two sort of quite serious. These are the two regions that are left out of the Greek alliance. So among the Greek alliance, you will find Sparta and the Peloponnesian League, and the Athenians, and also various Greek city-states from across the region, such as Euboea, Lesbos,
Can I
yeah,
just add one
Naxos,
something
yeah,
very interesting about Argos's defeat to the Spartans?
yeah,
Leonidas's father was the one that destroyed them in that battle.
yeah. And he did such a thorough job because not only did he defeat the main Argive force, he also pursued them into a sacred grove and then set the grove on fire, killing all the soldiers. It's a major act of sacrilege, and it's sort of linked to how Cleomenes also goes mad, which leads to Leonidas taking over the throne. But this serious act of sacrilege actually effectively destroys Argive military capability for a generation, effectively, and also makes Argos absolutely hate Sparta at the same time. So having Argos and Sparta in the same alliance, it was always going to be a bit of a reach. Not only do the Greeks gather at this conference and sort of discuss what they're going to do, they also send ambassadors over to the further corners of the Greek world. So they sent ambassadors to Crete, requesting help, and also they send ambassadors to the Greek cities in Sicily, specifically to Gelon, the tyrant of Syracuse, requesting for help. And Herodotus quotes that the message they send is that they should all sort of unite as Greeks, since the danger threatened all Greeks alike. All of Greek blood might unite and work jointly for one common end. So you very much have this language of we as Greek people are going to unite and also have the same common goal, which is to defeat the Persians. Unfortunately, Syracuse is currently occupied fighting a massive invasion from Carthage, so Gelon is unable to send forces to help.
Oh yeah, it's around this time the start of the Sicilian Punic Wars, right?
Yeah.
And Greeks fighting Greeks is pretty normal, right? At this time of year.
Yep. In fact, Athens and Aegina are currently still at war because Athens and Aegina hate each other. And we'll cover this
Who
when
doesn't hate Athens? Just want to confirm that, please.
Plataea doesn't hate Athens. It's basically one of the only Greek city-states that
Fair.
doesn't. And then Argos in the following century. Because Argos also hates Sparta, and since Sparta hates Athens, so does... You know how Greek diplomacy works? In a pretty ballsy move, the Greeks do send spies over into the Persian camp in order to assess how large the Persian army is. The spies end up getting caught by Xerxes, and Xerxes gives them a tour of the Persian camp, showing them all the different contingents. Then he sends them back
This
to
feels
Greece.
like Scipio Africanus with Hannibal's Scythian spies.
Yeah. Now, the initial Greek plan is to attempt to hold the Persian army up in Thessaly. There's a sort of vale or sort of mountain pass by the name of Tempe in the north of Thessaly, bordering Macedonia, where they think they can muster enough forces to hold the Persian army from advancing. It's basically Thermopylae. Is basically what they're trying to do at Thermopylae later on. The problem is that...
Can I just say, Tempe is, I think, the place where Alexander, when he ascended to the throne of Macedonia, rode south, right? And this is where the
Yeah.
Thessalians blocked him, and he cut the steps across with his horsemen and rode to the rear.
Yeah. It's in Greek warfare, in history of Greek warfare, you'll always find sort of some spots or areas come up more often than others. This is the case with sort of, especially in a place like Boeotia, which has, like, it used to have in ancient times a massive lake, so there was only really one way or two ways that armies could traverse. So places like Thermopylae, Tempe will show up just because they're very defensible positions and people keep using them. The problem with Tempe that they find out is that there are two mountain paths that flank the Greek position, and so while they do send the force up into Thessaly, the force basically immediately turns back to Greece once they find out about this mountain path, and also at the sheer size of the Persian army, they don't think they can hold them in Thessaly. And interestingly,
Apparently, Alexander, I think we were
Go
getting
on.
to the same point.
Yeah.
Alexander the First of Macedon.
Yeah, Alexander I of Macedon is the one who tells the Greeks about the two mountain paths. Alexander is actually a vassal of the Persian Empire. However, one thing I can't stress enough, all Greek cities and state actors all pursue their own ends in the ancient Greek world. It is not a very good thing for Macedon for Xerxes to have this gigantic mother of all armies crossing in from Asia into Europe, potentially eating all of his supplies in Macedon, much less the Persians having a sustained presence there in the region. And furthermore, the Macedonian dynasty, the Argead dynasty, also it also purports to have links to Greece. There's a reason why it's called the Argead dynasty. It's because they claim descent from migrants from Argos, who then went from Argos to Macedonia. And this is sort of the grounds in the following century for Macedonian participation in the Olympic Games. This sort of shared
Not to
Greek
mention,
heritage.
the Greeks really looked down on the Macedonians. I was like, yeah, they're barbarians. To
Yeah.
Greeks, anyone who's not Greek is a barbarian.
Yeah. So Macedon at this player is sort of playing a game where they're formally loyal to Persia. However, they do want to pursue their own interests, and it does help that Macedonia is on the peripheries, the very western periphery of the Persian Empire. It's on the European side of the border, and it's past Thrace. So they do not want Persian control over more than basically where they are. Although, one thing is that Macedon does also border Thessaly, and so the general rule is Greek neighbours will always hate one another, so naturally Macedon will hate Thessaly. So having a Persian army occupy Thessaly and potentially weaken Thessaly for the future would actually be favourable to Macedon. So managing to convince...
You gotta love Greek politics
Yeah.
at this time.
So managing to convince the Greeks to leave Thessaly to the Persians for them to ravage and occupy is actually a win in his book, so long as the Persians lose the war in the end. But this effectively means that Thermopylae is the only option to stop the Persian army, because if the further the Persian army moves into Greece, the more likely that each individual Greek city will sort of feel effects of the shock and awe of the massive army, and then end up defecting to the Persians. What is called Medizing, where you side with the Medes.